Sirens, Slammers, and Service, a podcast for female first responders by female first responders. My name is Nikki Clucci, and I will be your host. As a former correctional officer in Alberta for almost 2 decades and the founder of Blue Line Fitness Testing, which provides law enforcement fitness testing and first responder wellness workshops, I started this podcast as a way for female first responders to share the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of their daily work. I want to showcase the unique perspectives, skill sets, and personalities that women bring to a first responder career and share their stories. So get ready to laugh your ass off, learn a whole bunch, and be inspired by some pretty badass women. Let's go. Welcome back, guys. Oh my God, can you believe we are on season 6? Season 6, you guys, of Sirens, Slammers, and Service. I cannot believe when I started this podcast just almost 2 years ago that we would hit season 6. It has been a fucking ride, guys. It has been so much fun. And today I am joined by an absolute rock star. I'm joined by Marie-Eve Brindamour, who has been with the RCMP for 12 years. She's currently a constable with the B.C Highway Patrol based out of Chilliwack and is a member of the Criminal Collision Investigation Team. Marie-Eve is also a mom to 2 girls, ages 4 and 7. And her and I know each other because we had the absolute honor and privilege last summer to play with the Canadian Classics rugby team in Boston. It was wicked. It was so much fun. It was just a group of absolutely phenomenal women that we got to hang out with and play with. And Marie-Eve is also a rugby player with the World Police Fire Games Canada team. And she also represents rowing at the World Police Fire Games. So she's an all-around badass, amazing human being. Welcome, Marie-Eve. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm doing great today, Nikki. Nice to see you again.
Yes.
Or hear you, I guess.
I know, right? It's been a while. It's been so long. But we were talking before we started recording just about how much fun that tour was and how just it kind of lit our fire again for rugby and just wanting to be the team just actually came back from Houston a couple weeks ago. Both Marie-Eve and I weren't able to go, and we watched with jealousy and envy as the girls absolutely destroyed again and did amazing. And it's just, it's such a good group of women. And actually started by a police officer out of Calgary, Darren Chaplin, and he is just phenomenal. He's the organizer of it and just an absolute, we call him Chappie, total gem of a human. Love him. So Chappie, if you're listening, thanks, buddy. We appreciate you.
It's true.
Yes. So tell me, so when we were on tour together, we just started chatting, we kind of did like intros to everybody because we didn't know everybody when we went. We kind of knew the people from our own province and things like that, but it was women from all across Canada. So getting to know each other and found out there was quite a few female first responders on our team. And we started chatting and found out that you were in the RCMP. So tell me, like, what kind of got you into this career? What led you to policing and first responding and law enforcement as you kind of grew up into being an adult?
Good question. I mean, it's all kind of been intertwined with rugby throughout, so there'll be a lot of references to rugby. But as a child, I was always a tomboy. I like to, get dirty, and I always loved like movies with military or police and that kind of stuff. So I remember like G.I. Jane, like this was going to be me one day. So I always had an inkling towards one of probably policing or military, something like that. That's always something that's interested me. Even firefighting, like so it's been kind of there at the back of my mind. But I also love sports and I love rugby. So after I started playing rugby originally when I went to school, I wanted to be a vet. So anyways, it's been a long story. I'm not going to bore you with it, but I did a few years of university without knowing what I wanted to do. And then I moved out to Vancouver from Quebec, and I went to Simon Fraser University there, and I just randomly took a criminology class, and I really liked it. So I was actually originally wanted to be a vet, then I went into kinesiology for sports, and then I tried one crim course, and I was like, that's it, I'm going to do criminology. So I changed my major and ended up doing that, thinking I'd likely go into law school or policing at the end, because that had always been an interest of mine. And then in fitness as well had always been an interest of mine. So I ended up doing a degree in criminology. And then when I finished, I was like, okay, I'm going to go into policing. That's going to be my goal. But I wasn't ready yet. So there was a lot of rugby and traveling that I wanted to do before that. So after I finished my degree, I ended up playing rugby full time and traveling all around the world, which was amazing. I got some great opportunities, met amazing people, and your name has been around for a long time. Just we never got to meet until last year, but we had so many friends in common, and so I'm really glad we did. But basically, I ended up playing rugby for a few years, and in in 2010, I was selected for the World Cup team for Canada. But unfortunately, I hurt myself. I hurt my back. And then it was kind of the catalyst. I was like, okay, it's time to get a real job. It's so I was like, okay, because prior to that, I was working as a waitress. So everything was towards rugby. So what was the most convenient, for me to be able to study, play rugby and have some money. So I worked as a ski instructor for a long time. I worked as a server. And so that led me to, at one point I was like, okay, I need a real job. I'm injured. This is not going to be forever, unfortunately. So I put in for the RCMP. Took a long time to get through the application process because I traveled the world and just my security clearance. So
yeah.
I had multiple jobs, like 27 jobs, so many addresses. So they have to check through everything. So I remember the person in charge of my file told me my file was like this thick and it took forever to get through all of the stuff. And so if you do want to become a police officer in Canada, don't be like me. So working in other country takes a long time. So that kind of stuff. So it took over 2 years for my file to be processed. But yeah, by the end of 2011, I ended up going to Depot and Regina and to start my training for RCMP. And I actually loved it there. I went from, having been an athlete, having been injured, and I had to recover. So it also took a while physically to recover from my back injury. But once I was recovered enough and medically cleared, I was able to go to Depot. And to me, it was like a 6-month-long rugby camp. So, Most people hate it. I was like, this is great. Like there's a schedule, you get fitness a lot, like you have challenges. And then you can, if you perform a certain way, especially, well, in your exams as well, but in your fitness things, you can get a superior, which anyways, I'm competitive, as you can imagine. It's very competitive. So, I needed to get as high marks as I could, the best, scores that I could in fitness. So I really actually quite enjoyed it. Minus the food. The food was horrible. And it's hard to run and be fit when you're eating greasy, disgusting food. But anyways, it was actually, it was pretty fun. You're sleep deprived and all that. But as an athlete, I actually really liked it. And then throughout Depot, they give you where you're posting, right? So you give kind of usually a division. So they'll if I remember correctly, things might have changed now, but so 12 years ago, usually you'd be assigned a division, which for me, I was assigned M, which is the Yukon. So I got told during my training at a certain point that I'd be going to Whitehorse for my first post, which I was very excited about because I joined the RCMP to travel around. So I'm probably not your typical RCMP officer. Like a lot of people want to stay put. If I wanted to stay put, I would have gone to the Sûreté du Québec. Like there's a reason why I wanted the RCMP, and it was because traveling has always been a big part of my life. So rugby and traveling were always there. So that was part of my decision making. So I ended up being ecstatic to get Whitehorse because this was, I was leaving from Quebec. Well, I should do the map backwards. But anyways, I was leaving from the east from Quebec, basically as far as I could go, short of Nunavut, right? So, and then I finished my training, I graduated, and then I started my drive across the country to get to Whitehorse. Actually, you appreciate that. We have different speeding rules in Quebec.
Oh.
So, I shouldn't, anyways, it's pretty lax. So there's a certain speed threshold in Quebec. So I was right at that limit because didn't want to get pulled over. And then I literally am driving to Whitehorse because you drive to your first post. So I'm by myself with my little car that I just bought. And I cross the border into Ontario. Minutes later, I get pulled over. So I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be in so much trouble. Like I'm going to get a speeding ticket. Literally, I just became a police officer like days ago driving. And then I'm like, hi, give them my, my driver's license and registration. And then the police officer is like, I pulled you over for speeding. Yes, I know. And then I'm like, where are you going? I'm going to Whitehorse. I'm in Ontario. And the guy's like, so I didn't want to say that I was a newly minted police officer. And now we have to. Back then, we didn't have to disclose it. And then I was like, he's like, why are you driving to Whitehorse? Oh, it's my posting for the RCMP. I just graduated. And then so luckily, the guy was good. It was nice. He let me go. He didn't give me a ticket. So I definitely slowed down after that. I realized that it was a bit different, traffic rules. yeah, so I kept going and I ended up making my way to the Yukon, and I was there for 2 years. I loved it. Like, it was great learning experience, lovely place, Whitehorse, lovely place to live. It's just beautiful nature. Within 10 minutes of the city, you're in the middle of nowhere. And then, beautiful rivers, hiking, the northern lights, all that stuff. So that was, yeah, it was a great experience there. And also a variety of calls, like the northern locations, it's really good to be exposed to everything. So, I got, I think I had less than a year's service. I got to investigate triple stabbing and, things that usually you would need more service or there's not as much support. So for me, being competitive, wanting to learn, I really enjoyed that. Some people could be overwhelmed, but for me, it was a good thing. But yeah, so I ended up, I guess I should have mentioned that I met someone while I was at Depot in Regina. So that's going to play into my story. So I did meet someone while I was at Depot, who is my current husband, 12 years later. But yeah, so he was sent, when he graduated from Depot, he was sent to northern BC. And I was in Yukon, but there's no roads from where we were posted. So we decided to do long distance. And usually you'd go to the Yukon for 5 years, but because of my relationship situation, after 2 years, we made some adjustments. So he did his time there, I did 2 years. And then after that, we ended up getting married and we got posted together. So then we moved to Campbell River on Vancouver Island. And when I was in Whitehorse, I did general duty. So I was on the road answering calls and on shift works. So 2 days, 2 nights, 4 off. And I did a lot of also overtime and prisoner transports and that kind of stuff to learn, but also because I was living there by myself. No kids, just my dog that I found at the shelter there too. So I rescued a husky, a poofy husky over there, which is still around too. So yeah, so after 2 years, my husband and I ended up getting married, and we ended up going to Campbell River on Vancouver Island. Both worked general duty there as well, and another lovely place to live. Like, that's what, I didn't know much about the island, so I got to do tons of hiking, and then Mount Washington is there, so did some skiing and lots of exploring the ocean. So that was really lovely for the lifestyle. So I really liked that. And then while we were there, we actually had our first child, so that changed the dynamics a lot, especially for us 2 shift workers. It's pretty hard to get childcare and that kind of stuff to make it happen. So there was a lot of kind of juggling, and like one of us, it's be tag teaming, like coming home, high five, pass the baby, and then that kind of stuff. So we did that, and then after 4 years there, my husband got an opportunity to become an instructor, and all our training for the RCMP in BC is done in Chilliwack at PRTC's Pacific Region Training Center. So he ended up getting a transfer to get here, and I also got a transfer. So we moved here after 4 years on the island, and we moved here Chilliwack. So the transfer was for him, and that's one thing with the RCMP. That's when you're a couple, and it's only the transfer for one of the people. So his position was the transfer. So mine was like, I had to work pretty hard with them to find a job here, which was harder than it should have been. But yeah, so I ended up being transferred into B.C Highway Patrol. I mean, it changed its name. It was Fraser Valley Traffic Services. But anyways, traffic. I'd probably written 5 tickets in my life. So I was like, oh my God. And then everybody I know, all the guys from general duty were like, you're going to hate it. Because, I like to investigate impaired drivers, but, usually they'd fall on my lap. I didn't go chasing them. I prefer the assaults, the domestics, the most serious files and stuff like that. So I ended up being, sure, I'll go into traffic because it was convenient. The schedule was good. It had earlier night shifts, and I heard the management was good. And that's a big one. I think it's at the beginning, you don't think it's important, but as you get further into your career, the quality of management is big, and it really plays a big factor. So we ended up moving to Chilliwack, and I went to BC Highway Patrol, and it was hidden gem. Like, I actually love it, and it's been 5 years now somehow already, and had a great time. We have great management, even better. It's moved around, but we've been lucky. And we had our second child, so in 2019, and then COVID hit, which was crazy. So I was home on mat leave for a year and a half during COVID. And it was, we all experienced it differently, but it was, at least I didn't have to be on the road and interact with the public. But yeah, so I was home with my second daughter there. And then after I came back to work actually I should have said, while I was off on mat leave, they started a new team called Criminal Collision Investigation Team at my office. So I didn't know what it was at all, but I read the job description and it sounded interesting to me. So basically it investigates right now mostly fatal collisions and serious injury collisions, but that have a criminal element to it. So if somebody is impaired, if there's a dangerous operation aspect, or there is something like that, or if it's a prohibited driver, or like there could be even sometimes the collisions happen, but there's because of drug trafficking. So if there's a criminal element to the file, it would be taken over by the CCIT, Criminal Collision Investigation Team. So my new management there had decided to start a team in Chilliwack, and I applied for it, but I was on mat leave, so I didn't get the position at the time. And then I ended up coming back to work from mat leave after 18 months and getting back on the road. So it's, you're pretty rusty when you come back. So, go back out there, get all my recertifications and everything, and get back on the road and stuff. And then a month later, one of the members of the CCIT team moved. So they needed somebody, and they're like, hey, are you still interested? And so that was in July 2021. And I said yes. And so that's where I've been since. So since July 2021, I've been doing that. And it's been, like I said, a hidden gem. So we take over any serious injury or fatal collisions if they're criminal. We will help out with fatal collisions until it's determined whether it's criminal or not, right? Because we don't know right away. But depending on the circumstances. So we'll attend and we'll just make sure that everything, the investigation is done properly. And it's kind of a crime scene manager. So we'll go there and assign tasks to various members and make sure various things are considered. Like sometimes when we attend a collision, it's so serious, so busy that we forget things, right? So if I'll come and I'll consult over the phone with the members on the road and be like, did you do this? Did you think about, did they show any sign of impairment with alcohol? Or what about this? Anything with drugs? Or, did you contact this person? Do we have anybody to do traffic? Like, did you call victim services? So we'll make sure that all of that has been covered at the scene. And if it is deemed criminal, then my team will take care of all the disclosure for court. Because we have to do it a certain way now through electronically and through Excel. So it's changed, and not many members, especially not in traffic or general duty, have the skills just yet. So we're training lots of people. But yeah, so that's what I've been doing the last few years. And it's been rewarding, because in my books, a victim of a traffic incident is a real victim. A lot of the time they're an innocent victim. Real is probably not the right word. They're an innocent victim, right? Like they may be they're driving to work or coming home from a party, and then they get plowed into by an impaired driver or something. So a lot of the time, versus a gangbanger, that in my book, they're not exactly an innocent victim. So it feels more rewarding in that sense. And then we get to we have to deal with or interact with the families probably a lot more. And which can be very hard and devastating, really, but it's meaningful work. So that's one thing that I found over when I was in general duty the first 6 years of my career. A lot of it is band-aids. So you'll show up and help someone quickly. They call 911, they needed help, and you'll show up and help them put a band-aid on the issue, try to give them options to get out of their situation. But a lot of the time it has to start from them. But in terms of traffic collisions, like we can give closure to the families, right? And we can try to explain, we can find the truth. We can try to explain to the family exactly what happened. And yeah, so that's what I've been doing for the last almost 3 years now. And then I've started teaching as well. So I've learned a lot over the last 3 years. I've done a lot of courses because I have great management. So they're very supportive. And they've basically sent me to all the courses I've asked to that I've been selected to learn more. And then I was teaching last week on the advanced CCIT collision course. So we're teaching members to do the job I do, basically, and then how to use the computer program to to make really good, solid disclosure for court. So that's a thing that's kind of changed over the last few years, at least in BC. All the provinces are different. We're the RCMP. We work the same everywhere, but because the court system is different, our disclosure is different. So in BC, we've had certain requirements from the courts and to do it a certain way. So it's not the files are interesting when they happen. The follow-up and all the disclosure, it's a lot of very tedious work, but it gives a very thorough final product to court, to Crown, and it helps them prosecute it. So the hope is that those files, very well laid out and wrapped up, will lead to more guilty pleas and more convictions, right? So and will kind of help alleviate the slowness of the court process. So now I'm teaching on the course for that. So that's what I was doing last week as well. So I've been doing some instructing, and I think that's where I'd like to kind of end up or steer my career. Yeah, there's a few ways where I want to steer my career. So one of them that is potentially more and more instructing, and the other one is I'd actually love to go back to depot and be an instructor there as well. But my favorite one, my dream job, would be the fitness instructor at depot.
Yes.
So that would be like, because to me, that would be a mix of policing and rugby. And because I really like coaching. So I also have coaching levels in skiing and in CrossFit. And so I help with coaching rugby. So I like to do that side of it. So to me, I really would love to go back to depot and do the fitness. It's a corporal, so it'd be a promotion. And then it'd be policing and coaching essentially in one. Well, that's what I think it is. Maybe it's not at all. But my image of what this dream job is such. So yeah, I mean, it's been a very kind of interesting career. Like right now I'm not frontline, so I'm operational, but I only attend files if there's a fatal collision, I will, and it's in my area. My area is actually huge that I cover. I think it's about like 500 kilometers. So we have a very big area. So I'm based in Chilliwack, but my team covers a big area. So depending on the location, I may attend, or I will consult over the phone to make sure everything and all the processes are done right, and make sure that the charter rights are done right. So basically we're trying to avoid losing files in court by doing it right off the bat, and because that's not fair to the families of somebody who dies in a collision with an impaired driver, that if sometimes a member did something wrong on scene and then we lose it 4 years down the road at trial. And it's not that it's not on purpose. Like we're overworked, understaffed, right? Everywhere is overworked, understaffed. And a lot of newer members that don't have necessarily the experience. And so what we're just trying to give some support and stuff like that. And same with, I'll help with writing information to obtain for search warrants and that kind of stuff. So my goal is to try and help increase everybody's knowledge and skills so that we give better files and we get more convictions and we don't lose files at trial. So that's basically what I've been doing the last few years. And yeah. And then I think that's what it is. I'm trying to think if there's it's kind of grim. Like I don't really have a favorite, a funny story about especially what I've been doing in the last few years, right? But any of the things you see in the media, like a big serious collision with a vehicle that's been destroyed, a lot of the time, this is what I would be behind the scenes doing. So, I may or may not come to the scene to take pictures or make sure everything's done. And behind the scenes, I'll be working on putting the files together and make sure we communicate. And the other thing is what we do is sometimes we also work with files that involve members that may have been involved in the collision and that kind of stuff. So we're trying to find the truth. So we're not trying to get anybody in trouble. But we had a file which was quite interesting recently, but where we basically had a vehicle that got totaled. I can't say too much because it involved a member, but a vehicle involved in the collision had been totaled. So basically the black box, which is called the EDR, inside the car, it was gone because the vehicle was totaled by our insurance services, ICBC, and the vehicle was gone. So there was no data involved for this vehicle because the vehicle had been crushed and sent on a ship to China. So then we're like, what, like, we only have one side of the story. We only have what people say. It doesn't add up. Like the math doesn't add up.
Mm-hmm.
So what we miraculously were able to actually track this black box for the car to the United Arab Emirates by the time we actually tracked the ship. So we were able to track the ship all the way. It was on its way to China and the United Arab Emirates, and they were able to retrieve it from the car that was crushed and get it sent back to us to analyze the data. And this data actually helped show that what the member was saying was the truth and not what the other people were saying.
Mm-hmm.
So us being able to retrieve this black box, which before we probably would have been like, oh, it's gone, we can't do anything
Mm-hmm.
about it, it's their word against the other person's word, but we have actual computer data, right? We can have analyzed by an engineer, and then they can tell us exactly what happened. But yeah, so anyways, like little things like that, we can actually, like, I was like telling my boss, oh, can I go and get it?
Yeah.
Are you gonna fly me over there? And he's like, no, like you can euro later, whatever. But somehow we didn't believe it would happen. Like we got the pictures, and then somehow it got in the mail. At some point, we received this, and so things that people wouldn't know you could do, right? Like,
yes,
so we were able to basically reconstruct this whole collision, this whole incident that happened, and because we had both sides of the stories from the vehicles. So vehicles can talk to us by using computers. There's so many computers now in everything,
mm-hmm.
right? So a lot of the job we do is gathering this. So yeah, so that's probably one of the more like interesting things that happened in the last few years. And otherwise it's so many like stories. It's the same as you when you were in corrections, right? It's like you'll sit down with a friend or somebody and you'll be like reminiscing and like all the story come back, right? But it's not, it's otherwise I can't really think of anything off the top of my head that's particularly funny.
It's all good because like you've said lots of stuff. Like there's so many things. I've been writing notes just like to come back to stuff because it's just like, I mean, your journey's been amazing. Like from, like seeing movies and being like, yes, G.I. Jane, I'm going to be you. I did the same thing. I was like a G.I. Jane, yes. The other one that I also like, what I really like think back to is what made me want to get into law enforcement was Clarice Starling in Silence of the Lambs. Like I remember being like 8 or 9, I think, when it came out, and like my parents rented it from the Blockbuster and it was on a VHS. So for all of my young listeners, way back in the olden days. But I remember like it had a butterfly on the case or whatever, and I was like, oh, this looks like a good movie, not knowing it's about like a freaking like serial killer psychopath. And so I put it in, and it was like, Saturday morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, my parents are still sleeping, and like they get up, and I'm already like an hour and some into this movie, and my mom comes around the corner. She's like, oh my God. And like immediately like, pushes the VHS out. She's like, you can't be watching this. Meanwhile, in my head, I was like, I'm going to be this Clarice Starling girl. I'm going to be in the FBI. I want to be this girl. Like, wow. Right. So I totally got it. And it took me like, the funny thing is, like it took me like another, I want to say 4 years to ever get to watch the end of the movie because it was like, you can't rent it right at 8. You can't go down to Blockbuster. I would like that rated R movie, please. Thank you. But yeah, so like, I totally get it. I 100% get it. And going to the Yukon, oh my God, Yukon is on my bucket list. So we're going to have to chat more because I want to go there so badly. I just want to go. I want to go backpacking. I want to go hiking. I want to like do all the things up there. So I love that you were there. Like, I think that's so cool. And especially like you said, like just the ability to get all the different calls, like, and just like, because how big is the detachment up there?
Like the number of people the members, you mean? Like, like, so the detachment, well, it's headquarters is in Whitehorse. So it's a bit bigger than it probably actually is. I think there's only probably about 30, general duty. So there's 4 watches, probably of 6. I don't know if it's changed since I was there. And then they do have some sections. So I would say maybe 100, 125, but that's because all of the ranks are there, right? And the training section. So everything is it's not big size wise, but a lot of offices and a lot of people are based there. Yeah. But
we'll just like,
was great. Like,
and like just like again the opportunity to be like, because you're going to everything, because you're the the constable that's on duty. And so like that learning and that like,
Oh
and
yeah.
I've heard this from other people that have been to depot, like if you are coming out at the top of your class, if you are one of the superiors and you're like, you've done, they're sending you to these places because they
Yeah.
know that when you get there, you can handle it, right? That you're going to be good to go. You can go on your own. Like you don't need to be handheld. Besides, you're like your standard
Yeah.
FTO training and stuff like that, right? So I mean, that's so cool that was your, like that's your journey is into the Yukon. I love that you adopted a dog while you were up there.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, wanted to pop on here before we got into this next episode and let you know about a couple new rad ideas that we have for the podcast. So, the first one is we have a survey up, and I would love to know what you guys think about the show. I'd love your feedback. I'd love your ideas for the next season. And I just love to know what you like and what you dislike about the podcast. And I'm going to sweeten the deal with a $50 gift card randomly drawn from everybody that completes the survey. The survey is going to be in the show notes of all of our shows. So no matter what time you start listening to the podcast at, you'll get a chance to win that gift certificate. The second thing that we're bringing in now is the ability for you guys to leave us a voicemail. You guys can actually call into the show, leave us a voicemail, let us know what you think about the show. If you have a funny story you'd like to share from your time as a first responder, I would love those and showcase those on the show as well. So make sure you guys check out that voicemail feature. It's going to be in the show notes, and check out the survey. Make sure that you get that chance to win that gift certificate. Just like
I got one, a husky, and I got one for my husband too. So we actually have two, and we still have them, and they're like kicking around. The husky hates it because it's too warm here, so she's always like.
She's like, how dare you take me from my Arctic paradise?
Yeah, exactly. But actually, I was just thinking in the Yukon, like my first summer when I was there. So I think the watchers were supposed to be 6, and we had basically 3 of us for a whole summer. The first summer I was there. So like talk about learning, right? Like it was me, my trainer, and then our acting watch commander. So we're 3 constable. You're supposed to have a corporal. We didn't have any. So the guy with the most service was the acting watch commander. So the 3 of us just, keeping the keeping the city afloat for a summer. Like this one we were working. So in my mind that was normal though. Like that's what all I knew, but and then you'd go code 3 to a domestic 80 kilometers away because we actually cover all or 60 kilometers. I forget what the distance is, but it's fairly big, the distance that you cover around Whitehorse. Like the communities are fairly far out. And then we get some shootings and it was quite the experience. I totally would have stayed if it wasn't for meeting the guy.
Yeah. And so you said he was stationed out of northern BC. So where was he out of?
At Seike Dene, which is near Mackenzie, near-ish Mackenzie, a few hours from Mackenzie. It was one of those places where it used to be the worst post in BC. And then it's like, I went there once. Wow. It was a very interesting. So it was, the detachment was a trailer. The detachment was a trailer. And then it had, I think 4 trailers total, a trailer for each member to live in and their family. And everything was in a fence compound. And it was very, very interesting. Totally like a different world. And then because so you had to drive, I think to see each other, we had to drive 10 hours to Prince George and then about 10 hours, I think. And then we'd fly like Prince George to Vancouver and I'd fly to Whitehorse, Vancouver, or we'd meet somewhere or, meet in Prince George. So we'd do this long distance for a while, but it was fascinating. Like once again, the craziness there and on a lot of, because it's on reserve land, so a lot of the provincial acts don't apply either. So great learning experience for him, but also, very, very different. And they would it was an interesting story actually for him is like, there's a bit of a challenge. So he's a big guy, my husband, and he used to do mixed martial arts before. And there's, when he first got there, a lot of people tried to fight or tried to take his gun or that kind of stuff and, testing out the waters. And he, one day they got a call that somebody was that a bear was trying to get into their house. So the 2 members are like, okay, so they go, right? They go in there, sure enough, there's a bear trying to get into this person's house. So they put down the bear and turns out that somebody hadn't hunted the moose and hung it in their house because, it's a great idea. God. So no wonder the bear was trying to get in. So anyway, so they put down the bear and my husband ended up picking it up and carrying it over his shoulder. And that's when that the attitude from the locals changed entirely because he was just able to pick up a bear like it was nothing, put him over a shoulder and carried it, and they got rid of it. But then after that, there was respect, which was quite interesting. So there's a lot of stories like that were very, very interesting from his side as well. Like, and, entirely. So no more fighting. I mean, still when the people were drunk, but generally much less, right? Yeah. So there was like, and then So, anyways, he was great experience for both of us. The North, the reserves, and I think both of us would love to do it. Like we're hoping to go to actually Nunavut after the island, and then just like the opportunities change. So with the RCMP, because your opportunities, training, various things change. Like your career paths can change. Like I never planned to do what I'm doing now. It's not even something that ever crossed my mind. And it's not even remotely like G.I. Jane or any of those movies, right? It's more like, but I always also watched like Criminal Minds and all like I like the detective shows, like a FBI, like you said. So I always watched all these shows and I thought it'd be a detective or something, but we don't have detectives in the RCMP. So an investigator. And so basically, we're like, I would like to go up north and like explore Canada and do some real policing. And then, you have a kid, a work opportunity. And then it's like, do we still want to go? What are the schools like? What are the activities? So your perspective kind of does change with the family. And but we still want to go. Probably in a year or two, we'll move from here and try explore somewhere else. That's the goal.
See, and like, again, the opportunity that you get with the RCMP, because I've heard that from a lot of people. That's why they chose the RCMP, because they wanted to travel. They wanted to go. They wanted to see, the different parts of Canada and not stay in their same province. And so obviously you're bilingual coming from Quebec. Was your depot class one of the bilingual ones, like one of the French classes, or were you just in a regular depot class?
I was in a regular depot class. There were some French ones. For me, like I went to university in English here near Vancouver, so I was comfortable, and I played rugby in English, so I was comfortable in English. And also I figured I wouldn't work in French, so to me it didn't make sense. I could have asked for the French troop, but it didn't make sense to learn all the terms and everything in French, so I wanted to do it in English. But I had to do French. I think I had to do all my English testing before too, though. So I think that's what they do, and then they'll determine, depending on your level of English, whether you have to go on a French troop and take English lessons or something like that. But I had good scores or like on my English testing, and then I ended up in a just English class. But there was a few other French speakers in my troop as well.
I've had I can't remember if it was season 2 or 3, Katja Langlois. She's just a new RCMP, and she went through in the French class through depot just maybe a year and a half ago now. I think she just came out of depot, and she got posted up to Fort McMurray. She's like, yes, very much using my French up here in Fort McMurray. Like, probably not. But I didn't even know that was even a thing, like a full French class going through, right? So
but I mean, it's because of like they have the rights, like to be taught in French, right? But I was gonna say, actually, where I used the most of my French in my career? Whitehorse. There's actually a very big Francophone community there, and surprisingly, I ended up like a lot, and I was a bilingual member, so I get paid a tiny little bit more for speaking French. But surprisingly, I probably spoke French every week. I had some like whole investigations where victims and accused were both Francophone. So it was, I didn't expect that at all. But there's a Francophone school there. Yeah, it's actually a big French community. Like that's somewhere, if we were to go back up north, I probably would go back to Whitehorse with regards to family life and stuff. Like, it was surprising. And did you play tourists as well?
I was gonna say, Did you play rugby when you were up there? Was there a rugby team?
There's no rugby yet. They just have rugby now.
Okay.
I played basketball. I never played basketball in my life. So I was absolutely terrible. So, and I play with my elbows up like rugby. So like I get the ball and it's like, and I'm pretty tall and 5'11". So when I have my elbows up, it's normal people's face height. So people didn't love me because I can't shoot, but I like to set my feet and put my elbows up. So basketball's not my sport. But that was fun. Like there's just a good way to meet people, like community there, right? So but now somebody started rugby actually a few years ago, and I think they just joined the BC League. as well.
Good.
But I played BC's when I was there. So 2013, I was in Whitehorse. I played for BC. So I would just fly down on the weekend because it's only 2.5 hours, right?
Yeah.
And then there's SkyTrain now in Vancouver from so you could get from the airport. So I flew and I went to nationals and everything. So yeah, in 2013, I forgot about that.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
And I just totally aside, going way back. So when you left after World Cup 2010, where were you playing? Like, were you playing pro in England or what? Like, what were you doing?
Well, so I did. Let's go back a little bit further. So after university, I went to South Korea for a while to, as you would, to teach English, and I was playing there in South Korea. And then I went to New Zealand and I played there for a while. And I played on a club, Burnside in Christchurch. And then I played for the provincial team there as well at Canterbury, which was crazy, like so different. I love playing rugby in New Zealand. Like we got flown everywhere. New Zealand's tiny, but yet we'd take planes to go to our games and everything was paid for. I got like cleats and dentist mouth guard and gear. And I just was like, what? Like so different than Canada, right? And also played in, what's the order? Now I'm like, I played in South Africa as well for a while. So I went down to Pretoria. So that would be 2008 would be when I went to South Africa. So for quite a few years, I was traveling, working and playing rugby abroad. And then after that, when I started, so I got on the national team in 2007. And then throughout there, I ended up traveling lots with the team, right? So we went through Europe, played in England a few times, Wales, Ireland, and that kind of stuff. So that was, and every time I went somewhere, I always stayed longer because might as well, like, and visited. So that's where I played. But for my actual playing, where I played club and provincial, it was New Zealand and South Africa. So near Pretoria. There I played for the Blue Bulls near Pretoria. And that was also pretty crazy. We played at the big stadiums and being flown to places as well. And like, they have those weird suits you have to wear. It's just so different than, all they've done is, rugby is so big for men there, and then it's just hasn't really been adapted for women. It's more been mirrored, right? So these really ugly like suit jackets and like why are the women wearing this to their official events? But it was really neat to be like in the same room as like Brian Habana. So like they're playing for the provincial team, we're playing for the provincial team, and it's like it's obviously we're not on TV and we're like, but we went to the awards banquet and all the big names were there, and it was pretty Jean de Villiers, like all of like back then all the big players. So that was I guess 2008. So I stayed for a year in South Africa there, and quite the experience. So all that was kind of leading me into like after 3 years of that and getting injured, I was like, I really should get a real job.
Well, and even like you were saying, like, like you're just working to be able to play rugby. Like the amount, like all of my, all of my good friends, same thing. Like they were working as, like at Home Depot, and they were doing like, like swimming instructing, ski instructing. Like what can you do that has flexible shifts that will then let you leave every day at 5:30 because you got to be at training, and then you need to go from training and you need to be gone every single weekend because you need to play every single weekend. So like some people were bartending, but bartending during the day at like random restaurants because they couldn't bartend and make actual money on Friday and Saturdays because those are game days and those are prep days, and you're not going to stay up until 4 a.m. if you play the next day. So I totally get that. I'm just gonna switch because I want to just keep us on track, but so this new kind of unit within, the last couple of years, criminal collision investigation. So is there like, I was very surprised to say, or to hear you say that like your district is like 500 kilometers. Cause I was thinking just like, this is just for Chilliwack, but are you finding like, is street racing a big thing? Like, is that, and then there's collisions from street racing or drag racing, or people just, thinking that they've got really fancy cars and going really fast when they shouldn't? Like, is that something?
It is something like sadly, I don't know, you might have seen in the media last Saturday, not this weekend, last weekend, there's a fatal collision that involved 2 teens actually that died in Chetwynd, BC. And that was, it's not my area, but I was teaching and some of the coordinators were some of my colleagues. Anyway, so I heard, but I don't know how much has been released in the media, but from what I heard, it was one of the parties were street racing. So obviously it is a factor. It just happened. Here we do, like, you would be surprised. So the highway here is 100 kilometers an hour is the speed limit, depending on the area. The main area near where I am, and it goes up to 120. But we get easily people going 185, 190, 200,
What?
like, so double the speed limit. And those are busy highways. Like,
Yes.
these are the highways that these are all the birds of Vancouver. So like, and you're not just talking in the middle of the night. Like, it's shocking the speeds that we get people at, and whether like, yeah, so it is a factor. Like, a lot of our fatal collisions involve semi trucks. So a lot of them are basically more involved trucks, either plow through various cars, or there's impairment or stuff like that, or two semis that hit each other, that kind of stuff. But yeah, last week that actually happened, and I heard that it was possibly street racing. So yeah, so I think it is an issue. But yeah, I think it all depends on our files. Like, our areas are such high traffic that it's I mean, I'm going to say usually it's a bit slower than if it's wide open. But as I said, quite often, I'd say every week we get in the 180 plus. Like, if you look at the violation tickets that have been issued, which is terrifying. Like,
it's insane.
Yeah, it's insane.
Like, I can't even like, I speed. Like, I'm gonna say right now, I am a speeder. I have lots of speeding tickets. Gradually they're going away now that I'm not commuting back and forth down Highway 2. But like, I'm a speeder. I'm like, get out of my way. If you're in the left lane, you better be going at least 10 to 15 kilometers over the speed limit, because otherwise you're not going fast enough. Fucking move out of the way, right? But like, I cannot imagine, like, the honest to God, the fastest I've ever gone is like 165. And I was like, this is really fast. Like, if something fucking happens, like, there's not enough time to stop. I cannot imagine going 185, going 200. Like, that's and especially on a busy highway. Like, I would maybe do that, like, maybe if I was on like a wide open highway all by myself. And even then I probably wouldn't, because I'd be like, oh my God, we're going too fast, right? Like, I cannot imagine going that fast. That's insane. Like,
and a lot of the fatals are motorcycles as well. So now motorcycle season is going to start. So very likely we get multiple a year, and because once again, a lot of times easier to go that fast on a motorcycle, and like you said, it's a much slower reaction time, right? And then the other big problem is a lot of people are on their phones all the time. So not necessarily going in that speed, but if somebody's going 200 kilometers an hour and somebody's on their phone and does a stupid maneuver, like, the motorcycle can't react, or the car, right? So that's definitely, I think that is an issue. The phones, the speeding, but even impairment. Like, a big one is marijuana is legal, but it still impairs your ability to drive. And it's not because it's legal that it doesn't affect, or at least it affects your ability, right? And it can stay in your bloodstream for 24 hours, I think, is like, I don't have any of my papers here, but I think a lot of it, or even legal medication. So, if you're on antidepressants or anti-anxiety meds, it can affect your abilities to drive. It can impair them. And I think people don't necessarily realize that. And that creates more dangers on the road. Like, right? Like, if nobody was speeding, nobody was on their phone, and nobody was impaired, I'm pretty sure there would not be as many collisions as there are anywhere, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, and the way you were saying too about like how now your role is really just to kind of do the background, like, let's make sure these disclosures are good. Let's make sure this paperwork, let's make sure all the T's are, crossed and the I's are dotted, which I love, because having been the frontline officer who is trying to think of 85 things at once, and also still deal with victim and victim's family and people that want to talk to you, and, bystanders that want to video everything with their phone, and you're trying to like frickin' remember everything that needs to get done. It's a lot all at once, right? And so, like, I love the fact that they've kind of come up with this team to be like, we're going to help you. Like, we're going to make sure that this all gets good. What I really like about that, not on top of the fact that the victims' families are getting a greater shot at justice because it's not going to get thrown out of court. But I really feel like those officers, they probably are so appreciative, because the amount of work that they've done to put forward this file, right? And then if it gets thrown out to them, that's devastating too, right? It's like, well, you might as well just, like, why did I fucking waste 2 hours of my life writing up this report if they're just going to throw it out and this piece of crap drunk driver is going to get off? Like, that's demoralizing. And for it to consistently happen, right, because of a technicality, or they get a really good drunk driving lawyer who can get them off because this one form was filled out incorrectly. Like, no, the guy was still fucking hammered. He still crashed into this person and killed this person or severely injured, this mom who, was just driving to work. Like, as a member, to me, that would be so frustrating and demoralizing, and just like would really build up that resentment and that bitterness. So like to hear that there is this unit that's like, no, we're here, like we're backing you. Like, did this form get filled out? Nope. Okay, well, we need to get it filled out. Like, let's get it done right now. Like, did you do this? What about this? Have you thought of this? Nope. Okay, good. Because then it's an all-encompassing file. You're getting yourself the best shot of going to court, and that justice kind of being served the way it should be. I think that's phenomenal. Like, I love that there's that support for the officers, because that's super important to me, I think. But like I said, for me, that would be demoralizing. That would be one of the hardest things about being a police officer, is going to court all the time and just watching these people that you just did all this work for, that are prolific offenders that just keep doing it, repeat drunk drivers, repeat people, and like, oh no, technicality, oh nope, see you later, oh, and it's just like, right? So yeah,
that's very true. Yeah, and that's one of the hardest part. You're right. And a lot of the time, at least in BC, are even shut down at the Crown level. So the Crown prosecutors will not even accept the charges. So we only recommend charges. And then, so if our files are not done necessarily really well, or if they're lazy or they're overworked, they will not even go with it. So then it hasn't been, they've stay of proceedings, and it's like, what? So that's probably the biggest frustration for me as an RCMP officer, the number of files that hasn't gone through, and the people did it, like 100% did it. And there's no doubt about that. And the evidence is there, is just for whatever reason, the Crown prosecutors won't go with it. But since I've been on that unit, we give them nicely, boxed package, and everything's been accepted. Like, knock on wood, they've all gone further in the court process. So at least we've gone through the first level of the Crown prosecutors not approving charges, right? So you're totally correct, and it creates a lot of the guys now like don't even want. They'll be like, oh, why am I doing this? They're not going to approve charges anyway. So it creates that weird problem where like, it's not worth me doing the work. They won't say yes anyway. So, and we don't want that either. Like, that's really terrible. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I want to kind of wrap up, because I know you're busy and you're on your days off, and you and your husband actually have the same day off together, which is like a rare treat. So I don't want to waste more of your time. You got to go for like a date lunch or something. Go do something fun.
You should.
Okay. But I'm going to wrap up with some kind of like fun rapid fire questions. I ask these to all of my guests. I think they're some of my favorite parts of the podcast. The first one that I always ask is, so you can take this back to wherever you worked and any of your roles, but when you're on shift, when you're on duty, what is your favorite food or snack to eat?
Probably protein bars, built protein bars. And then we have a place, well, I'll just mention because it's great in Chilliwack. There's only one place open 24 hours that's not McDonald's, or it's called Yellow Deli. It's basically a cult. And there's like giant families that live in a farm, and they drive them on a bus, and they all come. There's like 15 children, but they're like super police friendly, and like their food is really good, and they're open 24 hours. So here in Chilliwack, we always go there. And yeah. It's just, you have to see it to understand. But yeah, probably that's what it is.
Yellow Deli. And so what do they serve? Is it like sandwiches and soup, or like?
Sandwiches, yeah, but everything's made in house. Like, they make their own bread. Like, they're like, yeah. And they have like hot drinks and stuff. But yeah, it's very hippie. And but yeah, it's quite an interesting experience to go there.
I'm like, okay, well, it's on my list. It's on my list.
Okay.
I'm like putting together, like having like, again, we're at season 6. So I have lots of like places like, oh, when you're in Calgary, you got to eat at this Vietnamese place. Oh, when you're in Alberta Beach, which is like a tiny little lake community outside of Edmonton, apparently there is like this amazing pizza place that you're supposed to go to. And like, so I'm like, I've got all these places now that I just like have to like start ticking off the box of like, where am I going to go eat when I go? Yeah. Okay. Question number 2. So having, working in this criminal collision investigation team, or, just when you were doing highway patrol, is there like a favorite piece of equipment that you get to use, or even just, again, if you take yourself into any kind of role that you've played, was there ever a favorite piece of equipment that you get to use, or you get to play around with, or you get to try out?
Well, maybe not on the road, but like if you're for recertification, our carbine is actually really fun, because it's really fun to shoot, and it's more like, the military. There's more that little part of me that love GI Jane, and I get to shoot it, and actually it's a lot easier to shoot than a pistol, so it's more accurate. So it's pretty fun. Like you get into it, it's heavy, but I really like the carbine. Otherwise, when you're on highway patrol, like your laser is the one. Like it's just a little handheld equipment that you can get people's speeds, and it's super quick. Like at 1,000 meters, you can pick out the car and tell you their speed, and that's the one we use the most. That's the most useful. But the Dragon Eye laser is probably, I guess, my favorite. That sounds so geeky, but yeah, I like the carbine.
I like it. Have you ever tried running past the laser to see how fast you can run? Because I would totally do that. It would not be very fast.
I've never thought of this.
See, you're hyper competitive. You've got to have, like, as part of like a fun research day when you're teaching, that is part of it. Go.
That's true. I was like, oh my God, I've gotten so slow in my old age.
No, it's okay, because you wouldn't have known what your speed would have been 10 years ago. So you can just set your standard now and be like, okay, this is what I'm like now, right?
That's true.
Okay, awesome. And the last one I have for you is, so, our listeners, lots of women or lots of people, there's all different kind of people that are listening to the podcast, but people that are looking to get into a career in the RCMP, what would be a piece of advice that you'd like to give them?
Well, I think I'll go back to fitness. Like, I think if you're like rugby, if you're really fit, getting into a game, you're going to be performing better. Even if so it's going to take longer until you lose your skills, right? Mm-hmm. So I think fitness is a big one. So if you want to get into work on your fitness, and start small. Like if you don't know, well, I mean, if you don't know what to do, they should call you. But I think, like start with jogging, or like some weights or core work. So I think if you go into the application process and the training fit, everything's going to be a lot easier. It's going to be a lot easier to adapt. And then, I think that's a big one. Otherwise, be honest. Like at any part of the process, when you're asked questions, like be honest, tell the truth. Even if you've done stupid shit in your life, tell the truth. It's better to be honest and have it laid out than to actually say a lie and then be caught later in a lie. And that's also might affect your whole career, right? Mm-hmm. And your credibility. So I think fitness and honesty are big ones.
That's fantastic. I love it. And like, as you were saying at the beginning too, like, are you kind of where you want your career to go and want to be, maybe a fitness instructor at Depot. I was like, so I would like to expand to BC. So what you're saying, Marie-Eve, is that you would like to be the BC owner of Blue Line Fitness Testing and do all the fitness testing for law enforcement out there, because I think you'd be fucking rock star at it. You'd be so good at it, right? Hyper competitive, super high standards. Like, you're just literally like me, so it'd be perfect. You could totally.
We should talk about this outside of the recording.
Right? I'm telling you. No, I think you'd be phenomenal. And I love that you're, you guys, you and your husband both are kind of keeping like your eyes open of like, just because this is what we're doing right now, it doesn't necessarily mean this is what we're going to be settled in and doing. I love that you guys are still open to moving across the country and having your family experience, all these different things and opportunities and chances to see different things and work different places and be part of a different school system and, activities. So like, phenomenal. I love it. Cause I think we do kind of get caught in that, now we have a kid and now we have a house and so we're just going to like, stay stagnant because it's easier than, uprooting. I love that you guys are still thinking, adventure and going and trying new things and going to live in Nunavut like crazy people. Like, I don't know that I would go like that. Maybe Yukon, but I don't know if I would go to Nunavut. So, but amazing. And I mean, like, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to chat with me. Like, again, we knew each other a little bit, didn't know each other super well, but having heard your journey now and just like all the awesome things that you've done and been and places you've been and things you do, like, amazing. You're a phenomenal woman. I love it. I think, like, keep doing what you're doing, keep pushing the boundaries, keep pushing the envelope and being adventurous. I think it's amazing. So any last words for our listeners before we sign off?
Well, I think, with regards to females, like I didn't even mention, but right now I'm the only female in an office of 26 or something. And I think that's one thing too that I should add is that, like, don't be bothered by it. Like, and then like, some people don't like that. Like, I don't mind it. I'm like, hey guys, do this, do that. And I'm like, whatever. And then, like, sure, I've been told that I'm intimidating, but hey, it's they're intimidated by you. That's not my problem, right? So I think, like, be assertive. That's a big one. And yes, it's still a male dominated world. It's changing. There's more and more females in policing and all first responders, but it is still mostly guys. But pretty much everybody I've worked with has been very kind and respectful, and I personally haven't had any issues there. So I'd say don't be intimidated by that. It's very possible you might be the only female working in an office, but it's also kind of unlikely, and it's not a bad thing. So yeah.
Love that. Absolutely love that, because that's exactly right. Like, you may think that I'm intimidating, but that's you. That's your perception of me. I'm exactly the same as you, right? Forthright, like, this is the way it is. I'm telling you how to do it. Go do it. Like, if you don't want to do it, well, then we'll have words later about that you should be doing what I tell you to do, because I'm your supervisor or whatever, right? But yeah, like, I totally agree. You do have to have that assertiveness. You do have to have that confidence in your abilities and in your skill set, and not necessarily, know your place. There's definitely times where I'm like, oh, I spoke out, I should not have, whoopsie, right? But like, there's other times where, yes, or there's other times where I think to myself, God, why didn't you speak up? Why did you let yourself, be belittled or be put in that corner when you had a valid point and you had valid, information that should have been added to that conversation? So yeah, absolutely, that be assertive and own your shit for sure. Love it. Well, like I said, it's been a treat. You kicked off season 6 with a bang. Some awesome stories. I absolutely love it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today. Well, that's it for today, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in, listening, giving me your time, your energy, and your attention. I completely appreciate it. Make sure you check out our next episode with another badass female first responder anywhere you get your favorite podcasts. And follow us on Instagram and Facebook at bluelinefitnesstesting.com. I hope you stay safe, keep your head on a swivel, and watch your 6.